You don't know that at the very top, that whole project is being run illegally.
These are brand new witnesses, and they've got bombshell information to talk about.
These technologies are unsanctioned. They are illegal operations, and this can be proven in any court of law.
It's like, wow, nobody's coming after us. We're gonna do this until we can get away with it.
They would have so much control over everything if they had that.
If this information was all released, it could fall into the wrong hands.
They're using security as a cover for illicit or illegal or even treasonous activities.
The members of Congress didn't have the detailed information of the precise location.
Where they keep the bodies, the craft, the debris, all the evidence that we've been searching for the last 80 years.
He knew how to keep a secret. Secrets were his stock and trade.
They're literally making their own money to fund their own projects.
We have a source currently in the deep black world.
It doesn't matter if you're president of the United States, you're not going to talk about that.
There was this large monolithic slab, looked like it was elevated off of the ground.
It is traumatic.
Look, this is the most top secret shit you've ever heard of.
Welcome back. Blake Cousins along with the panel tonight. World breaking news. What is going on over our planet? You just saw the trailer for Battle for Disclosure. Now we have founder of the Disclosure Project, Dr. Stephen Greer, and founder of Forbidden Knowledge, Billy Carson. We're going to do it live. We're going to do it right now. And we invite the world to chime in and leave us your comments. So let's get to it. You know, Battle for Disclosure, the battle is on. Disclosure is maybe in our hands. A new incoming president is about to take charge, apparently. And Dr. Stephen Greer has been behind the scenes in Washington, speaking with officials, executive branch, people on the inside with regards to what's going to happen next. So let's start it off with Dr. Stephen Greer. Welcome. And what's going on with these drones? Everybody wants to get your opinion.
Well, some backstory on that. These all began some months ago after a team of high-level black site defectors decided that they would come forward between now and in early January with all the evidence and information from 6 different black sites that have been involved in shooting down the ET craft, the reverse engineering of them, the ET bodies, and the man-made, what they call ATs, which is advanced technology, which are the man-made UFOs, which are most of what people see. Now, of course, the covert transnational corrupt organization running covert UFO UAP programs knows this. And of course, they can monitor everything with or without an encrypted block. And they are now launching what we had predicted in the late 1990s, and that is a series of diversionary false flag events to confuse the public and the politicians and the Pentagon as to what these UAPs are. So the whole launch of the drones that you're seeing in the United Kingdom, those started after I got back from the United Kingdom, providing briefings to the senior leadership of that country about this emerging disclosure that will be the biggest event in modern human history, frankly. The people coming forward are not secondhand or even mine or firsthand. These are operators assigned to special forces who have now risen up to a senior position at these key black sites, and they will be unmasked. They will be named, they will have the evidence, they will have the proof, and that's all happening in the next 30 days or so. I am telling you this because it is imminent. It's why I've been on a tour all over the world, meeting with senior officials in the U.S. government, the incoming administration, the current leaders in the House and the Senate. In fact, I just got back from Washington last night. So that is what is happening. The drones are a predictable launch of a diversionary and a confusing event. They're certainly not extraterrestrial or NHI. The pop culture now is non-human intelligence term, NHI craft. It's clear that they're able to have assets that are ground-based or in STIFs, subterranean facilities, or what some people call DUMBs, deep underground military bases, where they can launch these sort of objects and create all kinds of confusion and alarm and panic. This is now breaking all into the mainstream news, just as this group is pivoting to disclose the facts and the real information. So this is a PSYOP, psychological warfare operation. We predicted it. We've been predicting it for 25 years. If you read my paper that I wrote in 1999, it's on our website, drstephengreer.com, and it states very pointedly that the actors who are keeping this secret will take the momentum of disclosure and try to turn it into an alien invasion scenario, a good versus bad alien scenario, a way to keep war running all over the world, and also aggrandize the military industrial complex with trillions of dollars in new spending to create a countermeasure to the alien threat. So we know this was the plan that was hatched in 1953 or so at the CIA. We have documents to that effect, and that it would only take place because there had been a long-term, multi-decade psychological warfare operation that began in the late in the 50s in earnest with the man-made UFOs, and then later where they were using altered humans, and then in the later robotic aliens to abduct humans and to instigate terrorizing events like mutilations. And on occasion where they placed these man-made UFOs over developing world villages and blown up the whole village and killed dozens of people. Now, we have people on the inside who know all this. And so now the incoming president doesn't know this, the Congress doesn't know this, and 99.9% of the Pentagon don't know it, but this is what's going to be coming out in part. And the very granular details of what this defection group is going to put out there, we don't know, but it will absolutely be dispositive proof, but also the fact that they've agreed to unmask themselves, meaning they'll be named, is new. I just learned that a couple of weeks ago when the leader of that group met with me at my place in Washington, D.C. So we'll see what happens if they don't get scrubbed. I mean, if they're not assassinated between now and then, this is what's coming out, and I'm making an attempt. I sort of joke I've become the cosmic Paul Revere, going around trying to give a heads up to leaders around the world about this.
You know, exactly. Busy times right now, and it's crazy what's going on in the major media on how they're putting it out there. We don't know what these things are, but don't worry about it. They don't mean us any harm. And some of
What
these
nonsense. We know what they are, and we know why they're there. Now, the press conference at the Pentagon today, there was a young woman who was saying, well, blah, blah. And I think, honestly, now people say, well, she's lying. She's not lying. Look, I've been briefing people at the level of 3-star generals and CIA directors for 31 years this week, when I first briefed the director of the CIA, who knew nothing about this issue. They were lying to him. So people make this big mistake, and they think that because you're in the US government or the CIA or DOD, Department of Defense, that you know all about this and everyone's in this big conspiracy keeping it secret. No. 99.9% of everyone in the US government, particularly our political leaders, know virtually nothing about this subject. And what they do know is 9 parts disinformation, false information, and maybe 1 part information. And that's true of the House Oversight Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee, because I know that when we have gone up there and provided, you know, like the last meeting I had up there about a month ago, I had the senior official from Great Britain and the head of this special forces unit that is going to be assigned to law enforcement, not the defector, and then our whistleblower, the Marine, Michael Herrera, who saw one of these man-made UFOs with special forces, special operators in the process of kidnapping humans that were created up to be taken into human experimentation. Now, the group that is defecting have been part of that, and they feel terrible about it, and they're going to expose those criminal activities. So this is going to be the biggest disclosure in modern history, bar none. And the name of this film, Battle for Disclosure, which I helped you with, that is the name that is an important one to remember. It's a battle. Now, why? Because after all this comes out, this is when the battle really begins. Because what does a new incoming president do about this? What is the Congress going to do about it? Do we put our military and the media go on this sort of rabbit hole of negative false information, which is 90% of, say, ufology, abductions, mutilations, good aliens, bad aliens, grays, all the stuff that's been put out there over 70 years of counterintelligence and psychological warfare operations. If that is where that goes, we're in an interplanetary conflict. If we can expose that as a big lie, then we can move to what has been called this golden age. And by the way, it wasn't just Trump that said, we've been talking about a new golden age of enlightenment on Earth since I started being a meditation teacher in 1973 and 4, 50 years ago. And it's about this information coming out with the technologies being used for peaceful purposes to eliminate poverty and create almost like a heaven on earth, and fix the environment with free energy, but also to start a program where we make contact with these civilizations peacefully instead of shooting them down. So the disclosure coming out is the easy part, even though it's taken me 31 years to do it, 33 years. But then the battle of disclosure really begins. And it's this: how do we look at this? How do we interpret this? And if this disclosure momentum gets hijacked into this terrible, frightening left turn into destruction and conflict, it will be 1,000 times worse than COVID. And that's what I'm saying, the senior incoming people around the incoming president. I would say the same thing to Biden. This is a nonpartisan effort. I want to emphasize that. Now, if it goes this other way, it could be one of the most unifying, beautiful moments in human history. I think you have seen the sample speech I've written for various world leaders. You remember I sent that to you last week. And as far as I'm concerned, you can publish that. But the point I'm making is, it really is the battle for disclosure and how this goes. And is it something that benefits the human species and our future on Earth, or is something that leads to panic and destruction? Now, the people who want war and panic and destruction, they obviously want it to go in the direction of mainstream ufology. But if it goes in that direction, it's a worst case scenario. And I've said that for 25 years. So this is where the battle really does get joined. And it's information warfare. It's a psychological warfare. And, this nonsense with the drones is just sort of tickling the system.
It's interesting why it's rolling out right now, right before the new president coming in, and who knows what kind of sabotage fuckery that they're doing at this moment. It's kind of nuts. But at this time, let's just roll a clip, an exclusive from the documentary out right now, Breaking the Internet: Battle for Disclosure. Take a look at this. All right, we're back with Dr. Stephen Greer and Billy Carson. Now, let's get to you, Billy. You watch this roll out. It's been going on for a couple weeks. Again, people just want to get your thoughts on the recent activity. I know there's been sightings in your area of these drones, the unknown. What was your first impression when the major media was starting to talk about this?
My first impression was that basically they're just trying to take control of the narrative. When the media starts talking about this topic, it's almost scripted, or it is scripted. You can tell that all the outlets are saying virtually the same exact speech or pitch or whatever you want to call it. They've been written. Something's been written for them to regurgitate like parrots. And it's clear to see that what's happening or what's going on is something that's contrived and actually planned. You really get an idea, a sensation that this is something that they're trying to make so salacious. Like Dr. Greer said, eventually they're building up to, how can we make money off of this UFO, UAP situation? They've already gone to every country and blown everybody up to bring, quote unquote, democracy. There's nobody else to take over. There's no more banks to install in other countries and puppet dictators to install. The last place is the space race. And how do you monetize that? They're tired of being held accountable for trillions of missing dollars that happen, every single quarter. They can't find this money. And now they can have a great excuse as to where the money actually went and say, look, this is what we did with it. It's been approved. We're building these space weapons. We have to defend Earth against these outside forces. And a lot of government contracts are going to get given out to these private corporations where we can't get a FOIA against them to see what they're actually doing with the money because it's private. And then what they'll do is they'll dump tons and tons of money into projects that will never, ever see the light of day. Most of them will never be developed. They'll always have an excuse why this particular thing didn't work out or we couldn't develop this particular idea, but they'll keep taking in billions and billions and billions of dollars. The CEOs and executives, the C-suite executives will keep taking on big paychecks. And then they'll say, well, this one failed. We need another, couple billion or couple trillion, whatever the number is, and we'll start another project for a different type of weapon. And they'll keep playing around like this for decades till they siphon all that money out of the U.S. government. Really, it's siphoning it directly from the people themselves. So this whole drone thing is nothing more than a control of the narrative, and it's just a prequel to what they really are probably doing, trying to create another Gulf of Tonkin incident, which happened, years ago, obviously, which is what thing that really kickstarted the whole Vietnamese War. They really utilized that, had a whole lie about the Navy destroyer, the USS Maddox, which was patrolling off the Gulf of Tonkin. They claimed that they had an attack, but the radar and sonar didn't come back exactly as that. It had to admit years later that that attack in some way didn't really happen, but that was a catalyst to create this Vietnamese war, this war against Vietnam, and which killed hundreds of thousands of Americans and generated trillions of dollars. So
yeah, and don't
we have to
forget,
look at that.
I couldn't agree with you more, Billy, because here's the other part of this,
Mhm.
and that is the media, as you mentioned, the corporate big media, is integrated horizontally and vertically into this organization doing that. So, and what we've been saying that we can prove that through documents and what have you that we have. But the other part of it is that I called for about 30 years. I've been calling this entire plan to do a false disclosure and a psychological warfare spin on it as sort of a cosmic Gulf of Tonkin. That basically, to follow on with what you said, the outcry by the media that was all scripted and that then went to a public outcry forced Johnson to greatly expand the Vietnam War against his better judgment. This is historical fact, and it led to that quagmire. But it enriched the military-industrial complex trillions of dollars. So, they don't really care if it kills millions of people. They care if it consolidates their power and their control. And remember, money at that level isn't about a paycheck. It's about power, about control.
Absolutely. Right on the point.
The power, the control, whoever's in charge, obviously they want to seize it all. And what's been going on lately in the UFO hearings, in our documentary, we're talking to firsthand eyewitnesses that Dr. Stephen Greer brought forward. We got DC Long, Michael Herrera, and among others. So when that happens, why do you think that these UFO hearings aren't talking to these firsthand eyewitnesses? Why are they bringing in these people that are second and third hand?
First of all, they've been approached by people like Lou Elizondo and others who are professional disinformation operatives. Secondly, they don't want actually to know the truth. And I put a portfolio together for House Oversight that have had a couple of hearings that listed, and it was on a hard drive as well as printed out, that had 762 whistleblowers firsthand. And I gave them the top 23 that needed to be brought forward who were high level, who had direct information. Instead, they pull in people who have no direct information or secondhand witnesses, or who, in the case of someone like Mr. Grush, had followed some leads that I had provided to his bosses at Senate Armed Services and Senate Intelligence Committee, but he himself was never direct witness. The people who were direct firsthand witnesses, very curiously, they never have called. And on top of it, and here's a larger problem. when I first was called in by the senior investigator for the chair and co-chair of Senate Intelligence Committee about 3 years ago, they wanted everything I had. And I said, I will give it to you. But they said, and I said, you're going to need a dedicated staff to investigate this because this is a very complex issue and more complex than you can imagine. So our first meeting was a few hours in a SCIF, which is a secure compartmented information facility that's assigned to the Senate Intelligence Committee. And after that, they were going to have a staff of about 30 people through a contractor assigned to us to really do a deep dive into this. But the funding never got put together for that. Similarly, in the last couple of years, the House Oversight Committee was asking for a select committee with funding and professional staff, and that was denied funding, so that never happened. So let me, in the interest, I'm not trying to defend the incompetence of Congress, but also they don't have time and they don't have staff. The man who was the senior lead for the Senate investigating this was told he could spend 10% of his time on this issue when he needed 30 people spending 100% of their time. So in other words, they're trying to do it on the cheap and the quick and the dirty, but when they tried to put together the funding and the appropriations to do it properly, they've been cut off at the knees. And I've been watching this. And so I'm not trying to defend the fact that we put on a silver platter, here are these firsthand witnesses who need to be called and they won't do it. And instead they pull in these know-nothing people. But the problem is they also don't have a real investigation. I mean, it's sort of amateur hour, I hate to say that, with people who are very overextended and they're very busy. So this is the real problem with any of these people in Washington. And certainly it's the problem with the existing administration. But it's also a huge problem with the incoming administration because they're busy with a million other things. And, now here's what I think will happen. The revelations and the disclosures that are coming from this group defecting is going to focus everyone in Washington and in London and in Russia and all over the world like a laser, because it's going to be inescapable material. And senior operators, meaning SOs, special operators who have been operating these facilities and tactically involved, including the downing and retrieval of the ET craft and things like that. So at that point, it's no longer speculative, and the proof is there, and there are multiple corroborating people from these black sites. So I think that this will start a new era of at least attempting to get to a professional investigation, which has never happened before, honestly. There have been, sort of half-hearted attempts over the decades, and most of those have been corrupted, like the Arrow office was corrupted with Dr. Kirkpatrick. Other prior efforts, like the Condon Committee in 1969, the Robertson Panel in 1953, they were all corrupted. We have CIA documents to this effect by infiltrators who look like they were truly academic investigators and they were on the payroll of the CIA. I can prove this, by the way. It's in our Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive if anyone cares to look them up. But here's the big problem with this, is that I'm trying to get people warned this is coming. And by the way, I didn't select this date. I want to be very clear. I've been saying this to some senior incoming cabinet nominees that I've met with for President Trump, is that I didn't pick this date. This date was picked by the group that's defecting. And so, but that's the reality I have to deal with and that they're going to have to deal with, because this coming out in between now and early January, assuming they aren't eliminated or killed, then what we're going to have is something where the administration that's going to hit the ground running on January 20th is going to have an unbelievable task. So what I'm trying to do, to tell you honestly, what's taking 20 hours a day for me to do right now, is to get these people read in or briefed to a point. So we have put together here. I really can't open it, but I'll just show you if you like this. This is the 312-page new briefing document for the president and the cabinet people, and for the key people in the Senate and also in other world capitals. And that is now gone out all over the world. I've handed it to a number of key people personally. And it has everything they need to know in there. It's the tip of a big iceberg of intelligence and proof and data and evidence we have. But what I'm trying to do is get those people up to speed so that they're not caught, be crass about it, they're not caught with their pants down and unprepared when all this comes out. I mean, that's not good. And I don't care if they're left, right, center, or anything else. You don't want the leadership of the United States or allies or even other countries like Russia completely caught unawares. And then in that vacuum of not knowing, they get gaslit and pulled over into this dangerous false disclosure narrative that Billy and I have been talking about. I think people have to understand how dangerous that is. This is serious stuff, because if they get pulled into the direction of what, the guy who invented the rocket for, Adolf Hitler, Werner von Braun, who got pulled in under Operation Paperclip into our aerospace industry in the 40s and 50s. Carol Rosen, who's a friend of mine and on our team, she was the spokesperson for Werner von Braun for the last 5 years of his life. And in 1974, he turned to her and said, he described this, quote, last card they would play to consolidate world power under a totalitarian sort of military junta or leadership by playing this alien invasion card. Well, that was 50 years ago this year, 1974. This is 2024. Now we're at that 50-year mark. We knew that this was a 70-year plan that got started in the 1950s, and now it's about to come to a head. So I think all of us have a responsibility to counter that false narrative and try to provide guidance to the people and the media, but also to our leaders, that there is a golden age of humanity waiting, and it consists of the disclosure of this, but in a way that's hopeful, peaceful, forward-looking, not endless war and not weapons in space and war in space. See, it's the same information, but two diametrically opposite agendas and narratives. And if the narrative of alien invasion and fear and hate and war prevails, this is the worst outcome for the human species. But if this other narrative prevails, it'll be a beautiful time on Earth, a new era that will open of free energy, the end of poverty, a pristine environment, and our ability to interact with these NHI, non-human intelligence, extraterrestrial civilizations in a peaceful way. And then eventually humans will become interplanetary down the road. So you couldn't have a more stark contrast in what the outcomes are depending on what is said. And this is why words matter. Every word uttered on this by our leadership and the media will be important. But the drones going on, you can see what it is. The internet and the mainstream media is blown up with invasion and attack and fear and da-da-da-da-da. So this is what this cabal of sociopaths and manipulators have been doing for decades, except now we're coming to the end of that path. And how this plays out, my friends, is going to be determine the human future. This is why it is the battle for disclosure.
And speaking of battle for disclosure, here is another exclusive cut. Guys, take a look at this. Should whistleblowers still be afraid of coming forward, or should they think they have a free ride now, being that the new law is passed?
Well, I know the law has been passed and it's given whistleblowers an opportunity to come forward without feeling like they could be prosecuted or get in trouble or lose their life savings or their pensions or whatever.
but it's still a little touchy.
The bombshell claim about UFOs. A former U.S. intelligence official and Air Force veteran claims a top secret program is withholding evidence of alien spacecraft.
It's really the legislation that was passed last December that opens up the vehicle and avenue for these witnesses and whistleblowers to come forward. Now they can do it without any of these terrible ramifications. They should feel more confident, and that's really the whole goal behind this entire conference. If these black programs are extra-constitutional and illegal from the get-go, then it null and voids their national security non-disclosure agreements because it's an illegal program. So that's kind of one way that you can get around when that's what Greer had talked about from the very beginning. Now we have an even more powerful piece of legislation in place that allows these people to come forward, and they're coming forward. These are brand new witnesses, and they've got bombshell information to talk about.
I mean, one of the most important aspects about a whistleblower is they add credibility to this phenomena that's been going on since the crash in Roswell in 1947.
All right, that's available right now on all streaming platforms: Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube. Battle for Disclosure. The link is in the description. Now, let me tell you, these drones again, or these unknown objects. Apparently, just recently, the DoD was denying that there's some kind of mothership coming in from Iran, releasing these out of bodies of water, the Atlantic, the Pacific. What do you make of this, Billy? Because this is kind of getting wild. I've never heard the media ever say, or a lawmaker ever say, the word mothership until yesterday.
Yeah, I know, mothership, you know. So it's interesting because you really have to analyze the like Dr. Greer says, the words, the cymatics. They understand subconscious programming. These people have spent trillions of dollars in understanding subconscious programming, so they control the masses on the entire planet. They know what they're doing. When they say specific things, they understand the frequency that it puts out and how it can take over the human mind, and it can program a person into a fear state. When a person gets into a state of fear, they're easily controlled. I mean, very easily controlled. And all the other things that have happened to us, all the false flags and everything, prove that we bend to their will under fear. So they understand this. Think about this for a second. A civilization that's potentially 1 million years ahead of us, right, can traverse the vast distances of space and time to get all the way to Earth just to shoot little laser beams at us and try to blow us up one person at a time, and there's 8 billion of us. Doesn't make any sense. If I'm a super advanced race and I want to come and take over planet Earth, I would simply do something as simple as get some DNA from one of the people, and that's as easy as grabbing some DNA from a glass they just drank from, or getting some hair out of the sewer, analyzing that DNA and figuring out what type of thing I can create to put into the atmosphere or into the water, and within weeks, everyone's gone, okay? So nobody's coming guns blazing, battling, fighting, shooting laser beams and blowing up the military. There's never gonna be any type of a head-on battle against our military like that. They're too sophisticated. If they really wanted to do something, they would not blow us up like that. So the fact that they're going with the narrative of what we can see in our own idiom and our own limited understanding of technology and the way that war needs to be done, they're propagating this false narrative that there could be this attack via drones and probes and ships and things like that. I mean, killing 8 billion people one shot at a time. Come on, it's laughable. It's really laughable, especially for an advanced race of beings that can traverse space-time, that can traverse light years, that can bend space-time and create an Einstein-Rosen bridge and travel through wormholes. There's no way in the world they're going to come here with a bunch of drones, you know, shooting at military ships and things like that. The average person has been programmed to believe that because of what we've seen in Hollywood. Hollywood has us programmed into believing this narrative. However, the truth is, in my opinion, and based on my research, I just don't see something like that happening. To me, it's laughable that type of situation would even occur.
Well, let me take it one more step. And that is, not only are the civilizations not doing that, but the organization that has been reverse engineering advanced interstellar craft for 70, 80 years. They have technologies now that are almost at parity. In other words, would be equal to or close to what an ET vehicle or NHI, non-human intelligence vehicle or craft would look like. And those are operational. And those have been used in false flag operations already. And if you doubt it, look at the testimony of Stephen Digna, right? Who was at a army base in California back around 2000, where a Raytheon triangular object that almost had AI and bio nanotechnology where it seemed to be living. And when he touched it, it would purr and make this weird sound. And that was a man-made Raytheon device. Now, if 1 million people saw that and came up close to it, or everyone in Congress and in the White House saw it, they would think it was an alien craft, and it isn't. So the other part of this is that these clunky drones that are running around New Jersey and elsewhere, that is not what they really could stage a false operation with. The operations that I know they could launch involve technologies that would really just completely deceive everyone who doesn't know about it. It's why, by the way, probably 2/3 of this brief are the proof and evidence, drawings and photographs of the actual man-made UFOs and what their capabilities are, as well as a fact sheet of phenomenon that has been staged by humans as a psychological warfare operation versus the actual. It's a one-pager, and if that's all these leaders see, it's enough. So that is very important, because most people don't realize that the technologies, this is not the 1959 to 65 early man-made UFOs that were clunking around like you see from Mark McCandlish and Brad Sorensen, the so-called ARV from the Norton Air Show in 1988. Even in 1988, those were antiques. The ones that are now operational. Now, of course, imagine, as you mentioned, Billy, trillions of dollars in black budget funding, but also some of the most brilliant scientific minds I have ever met. They're not at Harvard and MIT. They're working in these covert programs with the aerospace and other contractors in very highly compartmented secret scientific operations. And that much money and that kind of brain power over 7 or 8 decades of research, there have been big breakthroughs. And they're in the hands of a group of sociopathic warmongers. And so this puts the entire world at risk until those are actually stood down. Now, here, let me get you to the next step. So this information comes out with these whistleblowers and the proof. The next step is that the United States government and others are going to have to authorize operations to stand down those weapon systems, because we are using very advanced technologies. And I was at 2 black sites, a little over a year ago, right before I was almost killed in a terrible accident, where we were present over 2 black sites that had these electromagnetic pulse and scalar weapon systems where they target and knock down the ET craft. And I have the video and photographs of them and the underground opening point for one of them. And so this has all been handed over to the government investigators, by the way. But after I handed over that videotape and photographs from that chopper I was in with this guy who's defecting, he's the head guy from these black sites, who's a senior operator, he's a non-official cover. So I can't say more than that right now. But I know what he's assigned to, I know what his cover is, and I know him very well. But that information, when he showed me what these capabilities were, how they were doing it, was astounding, because it also involved the use of a type of psionic interface, where a conscious thought interface can attach to technologies to hijack or move over these black sites, ET craft, so they can be hit with these weapons. He is going to disclose that methodology. It's going to be utterly shocking. It's going to prove everything I've been saying since 1991, when I wrote the paper about consciousness-assisted technology and technology that is assisting consciousness. and that the interstellar civilizations have that, but those have been reverse engineered and used as weapon systems by these covert programs. So we would have to have several hours here for me to unpack what that technological package is that humans have. But imagine people with that kind of technology, with this kind of malevolent intent, and the degree to which the Earth and our nation is at risk, and the degree to which they could stage false operations. So mission number one, unfortunately, for this incoming administration and the new Congress is going to be, how do we get those monsters on a leash? How do we defang that monster? How do we neutralize these weapon systems that are in the possession, not of the ETs? If they wanted to make us go away, we would have been gone the day we detonated the first atomic bomb, my friend. But in reality, how do we defang? And I said this to a senior senator very recently, a couple of days ago. The enemy is always from within. And when I was meeting this past weekend with a number of incoming Trump officials and cabinet level people, I said the enemy is always within. It's always from inside. The Roman Empire fell from within. That people are always looking outside, and they're always fighting the last war in the rearview mirror. What we have to do is focus their attention on, after all this information comes out, as I said, the real battle for disclosure begins. Part of it is putting us on a positive path, but the other part of it that isn't going to be pretty is having the law enforcement and special forces capabilities to stand down in CONUS and OCONUS, continental United States and outside continental United States, these weapon systems. And they're all over the place. They're in the outback of Australia, they're in South America, they're at the South Pole, they're at the Arctic Circle, they're all over the United States, they're in places in Europe, they're in Africa. These, and they're on satellites, and they are on ships, and they are on land, and they are on aircraft. So those sort of systems have to be completely put back under control of some sane people. Right now, they're in the hands of the worst possible actors who have operated with impunity for decades.
You know, we've exposed in the documentary Battle for Disclosure a possible CIA connection with multimedia major magazines, where we spoke to the head editor of the National Enquirer, who his boss was a former CIA employee, and then later
well, no, he was also
CIA.
no wait, he was an MIT guy who was embedded with the PsyOps, psychological warfare division of the CIA, which is more important to note, my friend, because that is how the media has people embedded who are this narrative that Billy talked about, that's almost like it's scripted and they're parroting. That is where that comes from. It's very well put together psychological warfare. And the founder of the National Enquirer came from that culture.
Yeah, it's amazing. And how it's the Project Mockingbird and the infiltration in all media. We expose in Battle for Disclosure not only the National Enquirer and other magazines, even 60 Minutes, CBS, even the boss of CBS admitted that the CIA was coming in, controlling the narrative, when the CIA is supposed to be working foreign and not domestic. So obviously this is a breach of any kind of constitution.
Well, by the way, it's actually against the law that formed the CIA and governs the CIA. They are not allowed to operate domestically ever. And yet there are people like Jim Semivan and others who admit to being operatives for CIA domestically. This is black letter illegal. And one of the things I've been saying to some senior people attached to law enforcement, I can't say which agency, but very senior, very senior, is that why aren't we grabbing these people up and prosecuting them? What good do we have if we have laws and there are people running amok of the law, right? Why aren't we enforcing the law? Because if we have no civilization, if we're not a civilization of the rule of law, the Constitution, equal justice under the law, et cetera, and so forth, right? So if now we can prove that these are criminal activities, and by the way, the group that's coming forward are going to talk about the fact that they have been in an illegal operation. This is key. I've said this since the early 90s. Nobody believed it. These guys are going to confirm it. Now, interestingly, when I was in Los Angeles last year, this team sent an armored vehicle to pick me up and drive me around. And the guy who was driving, special forces guy, he turned to me, he says, "Thank you for what you're doing for those of us stuck on the other side." Great title of the paper, Stuck on the Other Side, or a documentary, because these guys are patriots. Let me be clear. These guys coming forward are and were patriots, but they were young men. Now imagine, let me put a human face on this. So we stop out of the all academic stuff, because I know these men. You're 18, 20, 22 years old. You're a special forces operator or whatever. You get moved into compartmented operations, which by nature, you don't know really anything except your operation. And you're told to do as you're told, and yes, sir, right? So they get pulled into these operations not knowing they're illegal. But the ones who are there now are senior enough. They're 30 years in, or the senior guy is 29 years in these illegal black projects. And now, once he got to a certain level, they've been following my work for years, and they go, well, damn, I am in an illegal operation, and they know it. And sometimes they break down in tears talking about the horrible things they've done in these illegal operations. These are good men who have been caught in a horrible system. But by the time they remember, you need to understand the details of this, folks who are listening. By the time they realize that they're in an illegal project, they've already been had and they can't get out. So what I've been trying to do is create a pathway that's safe for them to come out. So let me collect one more dot here, connect. Very important dot, Billy, for you. All right, and people you know. The information they're going to give me as they come forward, because they've gone to ground now, they're only communicating with me. I'm going to hand off to every celebrity and every media outlet and every influencer I know. And I need you guys to do the same thing. And it'll be open source. It'll be on a site that is blockchain protected, that's now stood up. And it's got to be seen by several billion people within a few days. So that means it's got to go wide. We're not talking about ufology and a handful of UFO nuts knowing about this. The reason for it is that this summer he came to my place in Washington, and he says, we don't want to risk our lives and our families' lives. And the main guy has 3 children, 2 of them are still fairly young, and he doesn't want to have his whole family killed for no good reason. In other words, where this gets released and it's a tree that fell in the woods nobody heard. So I said, let me put together this asymmetric disclosure where, regardless of what the bureaucrats in Washington do, or London, or anywhere else, it's seen by a large number of people. It's like what I've always said, you squeeze the toothpaste so hard out of the tube, it cannot be put back in. But listen, everyone listening, if you're an influencer, if you've got a YouTube channel, a Facebook, TikTok, X, we're going to have it on a site where you can download it and put it everywhere. So this has got to go viral, and it's got to go hard. Now, I don't have a date. All I'm told is between now and early January, but we're going to need your help. This cannot be scrubbed and erased by the corrupt mainstream media. It's got to go everywhere.
Yeah, it's in everybody's hands.
And
Disclosures in community.
That is the promise I have made, but I can't do it by myself. I mean, I have a certain following, but I don't have, 2 or 3 billion people following.
Well, we're all going to get it out there for sure.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to say, by the way, if anybody's watching here, I'm sure there's tens of thousands of people watching right at this moment, but feel free to share this podcast and download it, upload it onto your YouTube channel. It's all clear. We just want to get the word out on this battle for disclosure. And speaking of battle for disclosure, I want to show a little sneak peek with regards to the National Enquirer CIA connection. Take a look at this.
We know that, for example, and I've had this shared with me by senior intelligence officials back in the 90s, that a lot of the best UFO cases would be channeled away from the mainstream media to, frankly, discredited tabloids like the National Enquirer.
My name is Bill Graham, and I worked almost 25 years at the National Enquirer.
Firing minds want to know.
I want to know.
When I started out, was the only medium around that covered the subject of UFOs.
This is the stuff that tabloid dreams are made of.
In 1981, when I joined the Enquirer, we put a lot of money into covering UFOs. I knew there was like a dedicated crew that we had that's all they did. And many people aren't aware how much money the Enquirer actually spent on the subject. The Enquirer was a cash cow. The publisher learned how to really make a lot of money by being at every supermarket checkout counter in the country. So with all this cash flowing in, money was never any object. We'd send people to countries in South America, Asia, and so, you know, people were skeptical because it's the National Enquirer. Oh, this isn't true, this isn't true. And I went in very skeptical myself at first. And then my job as a photo editor, we'd have teams of people go in and interview people that saw something. And it wasn't just like lights in the sky. I would see stories where, you know, we'd have story files. The person would own a farm and a UFO would land at the farm. And it wouldn't just like be a light in the sky, it was something with form, structure. And there was frequently like a beam of light that would sort of paralyze them. And they would show, they would have, some of them had burns, radiation burns and things. So that changed my way of thinking on the subject of UFOs.
All right, that was Bill Graham, a major inside. He worked there for 25 years, and obviously the National Enquirer, they paid for information. Could you imagine the information coming in? They paid big bucks. So people want to make money, they're going to sell information. These guys were ready to share it, and a lot of this stuff got suppressed. But the narrative that they put out on the National Enquirer was to dumb down this the UFO subject matter in general and make it seem that it was a threat. People were getting burns from these things. And if they were getting burns, these were the man-made vehicles. But Billy, you know, it's interesting how things are rolling out. What do you think the major battle ahead of us is? And what's your take on battle for disclosure?
Well, the major take I get on battle for disclosure is we're putting disclosure in the hands of the people where it actually belongs, because the people actually have the power. We've been duped into thinking that we have no power, but we're the ones that have the power. And we have to realize that the governments of the world are supposed to be working for us and that we're supposed to tell them what to do. They flip the narrative on us and they brainwash us into thinking that we work for them and we better do what they say or they're going to punish us. And that fear that they set in our hearts is what's been holding us back this entire time. And we also have to realize who is at the head of a lot of this secrecy. I believe it's personally the CIA. I mean, you know, the CIA monitored investigations conducted by the Air Force for Project Blue Book. You know, they were gathering intelligence back then. The CIA sponsored the Robertson Panel, which was a group of scientists that were evaluating UFO sightings. You know, they concluded that, of course, most of the sightings were just swamp gas and natural phenomena. But every time you turn around, you find out that these people in this three-letter agency are controlling that narrative from behind the scenes with no congressional oversight, with no input from the president of the United States and so forth and so on. So in some way, shape, or form, that situation, that illegal situation has to be dealt with or has to be understood or has to be addressed. I think that's the biggest linchpin in this whole thing that's kind of holding it all from just the water fountains from just spewing out all the information is that three-letter agency.
Well, here's a good bit of good news I learned about an hour ago. There are a couple people who are going to be moved into key positions at the CIA that I have known for some time and who are supporters of disclosure and are very conscious people, and they're going to be in key positions in a few weeks. And I can't say more than that, but you know, I have to be very careful what I say about some of the methods and sources and people, but I'm talking about people I work with directly. And these are people who understand what's at stake, and they have come to events with me. I have met them. And so what I think is that there is an opportunity, whether it gets done, there's an opportunity to transform that into, whether it's the Pentagon or the CIA or else, into a force that will be on the side of a truthful and positive disclosure that leads to a good future. But again, this is a battle because we're definitely the underdog. The power and technology, and even from a tactical point of view, when I meet with these special operators and special forces people, not the defectors, but the ones who are being stood up to actually go and get these projects under control, constitutional control. These are separate groups I'm advising. I tell them, look, you're not going to be running up against a tank or a helicopter. You're going to be going up against anti-gravity devices and weapon systems that are quantum potential weapons and scalar and electromagnetic weapons that can make anything you have drop out of the sky like a rock. So, this is a very complicated problem. And I've been spending a couple years now with these folks that if they have to go tactical, meaning operational on these black sites, they have to know what they're up against. So under the best scenario, given what is in the kit or the equipment of the legal government of the United States, they are enormous underdogs against the technologies that are there. And I know this because I've been at these places and I know what they have and what their capabilities are. So I'm sort of advising this group that it needs to be done in a way where we get people who are operators on our side. So this is one more appeal. You're going to see this material coming out in the next month or so. I would advise other people in other positions who are at these key black site facilities to come forward in the aftermath of this. This needs to be not a one-off. There needs to be more people coming forward. And also, if you are operational at any of these key facilities, such as Dugway Proving Grounds or Nellis or Edwards or any of these other facilities, that you cooperate with legal authorities in the United States and not pick up your weapons, but cooperate. Even if you're at a lower level and you don't know that the program you're in is illegal, let me tell you now, it is, and you need to not be on the wrong side of the law, and you need to make this a peaceful transition. I am optimistic, given who I know right now, what's going on, is that there's a decent chance that this whole 70-year legacy of these programs can be transformed without violence and without loss of life. That's my goal. I'm an emergency doctor. I save lives. I don't kill lives, take lives. But, I'm hoping that that's done. But the way that happens is that people who are in these facilities go, like the ones who are now, they say, we're fed up with this. So they're coming, right? But they do it in a way that doesn't require countermeasures that have to be aggressive or violent, because we don't want that. But at the same time, you cannot let a bunch of power-hungry, crazed people with a earth-ending agenda who have these sort of technologies to bestride the earth like a Frankenstein and have no one stand them down. So, unfortunately, unless they transition peacefully, which this drone attack nonsense would indicate they're not inclined to, right? Then it's a problem. But the only way that the leadership of that organization is, and I don't want to get into that, I know who some of them are, and I've met with a couple of them, transition peacefully, is that no one's taking their orders down below. In other words, if they order the grunts, let's call them, and the operators at any of these facilities to fight back or do this, they go, no, we're not going to. In other words, they defy. It would be people in the Third Reich defying the rank and file, going, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do this atrocity, right? Mm-hmm. So this gets into a very personal, difficult decision where people will not follow the orders of their chain of command because they realize what I just said, that they're in an operation that is illegal and criminal, and therefore they're not required to execute those orders, right? Those organizations and programs are operating without the authority of the United States government or Constitution or president or Congress. Therefore, they can say, I don't recognize your authority. Now, back in the early 90s, when I was threatened legally for what I was doing, I said, oh, really? Come put on the bracelets right now, right goddamn now. And I said, I will then have a court case where we'll have to subpoena the president of the United States, the CIA director, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, XYZ senators and members of Congress, and they will have to testify under oath that even though they should know if it was a legal operation, they had no knowledge. And as soon as they say we were not informed or read in and did not authorize this, and it was an unsanctioned illegal operation, boom, you got them, because that's called treason against the United States. So I think that, I know I get a little bit agitated about this because I've been in this battle for disclosure for 34 years. But I think that we need to remind these guys and women who are in these covert facilities and corporations that they can come forward now because they're in an operation that's illegal. There's nothing, no law they're going to break. I mean, if what we have been doing against the law, I have top secret documents in here. Here it is. They're in here. And many of them I've already published. If this was a legal operation, I'd be in prison. I mean, look at the investigations they did against Biden and Hillary Clinton and Trump on top secret documents. Well, here they are. I have a bunch of them, right? But because we established in the 90s that these were criminal activities, because it's a criminal enterprise, they cannot claim that they are protected under the National Security Act or the laws of the United States. You can't have it both ways. What I've told members of Congress is like, you don't even have to do this in a skiff. Why would you, if you were trying to get to the bottom of a mafia operation, would you treat their secret illegal programs with a national security imprimatur and status and investigate it in a skiff? No. And this is no different. But most people in the US government don't realize that yet. I would say virtually nobody. After what comes out, after this comes out, when these guys describe who they are, what they've been doing, and that they have been in illegal programs, then they're going to realize, all right, this is all true.
You know, I asked Congressman Tim Burchett with regards to technology, a possible rogue corporation, and he was pretty concerned. He said that keeps him up at night. Let's roll a quick clip of this interview exclusively on Battle for Disclosure, available right now. Take a look at this. Do you believe that there are private corporations that have gone rogue with this technology?
That scares me, that they could get a hold of it and move ahead with it. That's why I think it's better if we know out in the public, because they would have so much control over everything if they had that. To me, that should be warning enough. But the beauty of it is it's so advanced, I just think we're clueless. You know, I'd be surprised if we had anything in the way of a reversed engineered craft. I just don't think we have the technology to pull that together. I may be wrong, you know, maybe people laughing at me right now when they see that, but I just think it's so far advanced that we don't have a clue. And I've talked to pilots that have said they're, you know, basically, and they've drawn out, yeah, okay, I can say that. I think they've drawn out pictures of things that they don't exist in any military aircraft in this world. They got no reason to lie to me. I mean, all they're doing is going to get lit up, because even if there is a, you know, they're not going to any retribution against them. They're still, you know, they destroy information, they destroy tapes, because they do not want to have to be taken off the flight line or whatever for 8 hours to be, you know, to be interrogated, when they should be saluted for coming out with some honesty.
All right, there it is, Congressman Tim Burchett. He says that would concern him highly. Right now, with this drone situation, it's interesting. We have Lockheed Martin and McDonnell Douglas sending out drones, chasing these drones. Is this a blue on blue, Billy? Is this what's your gut feeling where these drones are coming from? They're seen on the Pacific, they're seen on the Atlantic, all at the same time, hundreds, if not thousands of these things. Where are they being dispatched from?
I'm not sure where they're being dispatched from, probably from multiple locations geographically around the world. But like Dr. Greer said, I believe it's all part of just one giant psyop. So I think they're all working in collusion with one another. They meaning Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and all these other big corporations that take these private Pentagon contracts to do all this stuff behind the scenes that we never get privy to. And this gigantic drone operation is just one gigantic psyop. It's testing, first of all, the resolve of the citizens of the earth. Like, how will they respond to this? What will be the chatter about this? You know, how are they going to be afraid? How afraid will they be? Let's measure their fear on a scale of 1 to 10. Do you think this is enough to manipulate them? Let's also continue to do this because now we're dropping seeds into their subconscious that something can happen like this again, and it could be a bigger, more widespread attack with more damage and more death. And all these type of crazy scenarios. They really spend a lot of time and money doing these psyops, focusing on psyops, understanding how to get into the psyche of a human being, understanding how to manipulate people from the deepest soul-based level to get them to accept and do whatever they decide they want to do to them, to allow them to keep the boot on the neck, and will praise them and beg them to keep the boot on our necks because of the way that they've manipulated us. And this whole drone thing, in my opinion, is just another one of those things that you see where it's pre-planned, pre-set up, and coordinated. It's a coordinated event, but the average person won't be able to see it simply because of the programming they've been taking in from Hollywood, from the news feeds, you know, from everywhere else. And then now they are, man, this is crazy. We could be under attack soon. It's the end of the world. And this whole end of the world doctrine and all this other kind of stuff. It's not the end of the world. It's the beginning of the world. It's only the end of the world if we let it become the end of the world. It's up to us to have that battle for disclosure and make sure that we, the people, take back control of this planet.
Yeah, and right now, the only way that's going to happen is that we are careful not to be gaslit and be stampeded into panic and make bad decisions like we did in 9/11, like we did with COVID, like we did with the Vietnam War. These are expert people on manipulating media and human psychology, and now social media, by the way, in the direction they want it to go. And that, to me, is the real battle for disclosure, or a part of it. And because if they can capture the minds and hearts of people through fear, once people, like you said earlier, once people get into a fear mode and a fight or flight response, the human brain shuts down its rational and even higher spiritual function and discernment, and can then be stampeded into any action. And they understand this. The organization that is involved in keeping this secret, they understand how powerful the override of the rational mind is by fear. And so this has been a tool of war and of psychological warfare for millennia, frankly. But they have honed it to a real science and art in the last 50 years.
We were not to look back because it would smoke us, right? And mind you, the whole time that we're observing this crap, when they have us at gunpoint, they're telling us that they could kill us, they could throw us out of a helicopter, it's very easy to get lost in the jungle. Like everything you can think threat-wise, this is what they were saying. After we end up going to the slope, they told us to get the hell out of there, and we booked it. I mean, that's probably the fastest I've ever ran besides trying to do a physical fitness test, trying to get a good score. But we ran to the LZ that we came from, and there was a gunnery sergeant there, and he was not in my unit, but he was either attached to the ship, whether it was a combat loading support, whatever that is. But he was chewing our ass because we basically came back too soon. So he was asking why we were condition 4. Condition 4 means that you basically have an empty weapon. So we waited for the next bird to come. A bird did come, and we boarded it. We went back to the ship, which was the USS Denver. We went to the armory to turn back our weapons in, and we gave them back our ammunition. We went to our berthing, took our gear off, and just had our camis. And we were told to report to the flight deck, at least everybody who participated in the operation. And I found my camera that I actually recorded this when I took some pictures of this before we went down the hill, put it back in my dump pouch. I found it on my rack, and then the memory card was missing out of it, as well as the battery. So you couldn't turn it on or nothing. And I had it in my locker. I had everything locked up, secured. Always tug on that thing to make sure, because I want stuff stolen. And the ironic thing too was the fact that the other 5 Marines that were with me actually had their phones missing in case they end up getting some of this too, which none of them did, at least I'm aware of. But I think I was the only one that actually had something that I was recording. So that is out there somewhere, whoever's got it. I would like to see that. I'm sure you guys would too, because the way that this thing looked, it was just crazy.
No, if you have to sum up Battle for Disclosure, I'm asking this to both you, Billy, and Dr. Stephen Greer. What is the most important thing people should take away from this documentary? First off, in my opinion, it's the firsthand eyewitnesses. You got, I think, 4 whistleblowers coming forward, explaining their situation. The Congress doesn't want to hear their stories, but the documentary goes into full detail with regards to their statements, their experiences, and their basic threats of even coming forward and stating these events that they experienced, threats to their lives. So, you know, the battle, it was crazy just to even get this documentary out. It's been a year and a half in the making. It's going to be first to hit the street. There's been a void of some of these documentaries that have made it on the mainstream, like Amazon and iTunes. And it's amazing that we're able to get this information out, even though it's hot and sensitive. We're still lucky enough to get these documentaries into the public eye. It's really important. But, you know, Battle for Disclosure, it's on the front line right now, and I'm glad we're getting it out before the end of the year.
So they've had these advanced platforms that fly, anti-gravs, since the mid and late 50s, and they have been used in psychological warfare exercises trying to create this false alien threat narrative. And that means that they've collected an enormous portfolio of cases that they've created that look alien, that they can put in front of the National Security Council, the Congress, and whistleblowers like Mr. Grush, who haven't gone in deeply enough on this issue to know what is real and what has been faked. So I think this is where we have to be very, very careful.
My name's Sean Ryan. I'm a former Navy SEAL and former CIA contractor. I was SEAL for 6 years. Then I jumped over the agency, did 9 years over there, got over 20 combat deployments altogether. I mean, I think the benefit of protection to the whistleblowers is getting information out into the public that should have been out a long time ago. And now that the government is offering some sort of protection for the whistleblowers, I think it's going to give people the courage to come out and release some of this information that needs to be released. I do believe that there are certain programs that civilians should not have access or know about, depending on what we don't want our information, our classified information, to fall into the wrong hands. With that being said, yeah, it would be great if the public did have access to it. However, we do have to understand that there are people that, if this information was all released, it could fall into the wrong hands as well. Maybe it's already into the wrong hands, but that's not for me, to decide. Do I expect full disclosure? Yeah. I don't expect full disclosure. I don't have that much confidence in our government.
Well, I think the big takeaway is that this is going to accelerate and come out pretty quickly now, and that we have to be very mindful of not being deceived by these sort of operations like this drone, because this could escalate from that to things that really do look like a UFO, because they're man-made, to even worse things. And so I think that the people need to have clarity on this, and we need to have a lot of people coming forward, such as this group of defectors. We need that to become an avalanche of people coming forward, confirming all of this, and also cooperating with the authorities in taking the capabilities out, so that real disclosure consists of not just information, but getting these technologies to be used for good purposes and peaceful purposes, but also preventing the misuse and abuse of those technological breakthroughs, which we the people have paid for. So I think that that's what the battle really is, and that we all need to roll up our sleeves and be on the side of the angels and of a good future for humanity.
Billy?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Dr. Greer hit it on the head. I really believe that we're dealing with people that have, these firsthand accounts not for the first time, because Dr. Greer has been doing this for a very long time, but as far as, you know, this battle for disclosure, to hear the stories of firsthand accounts, people that have actually been there, that have been injured, that have had family members, you know, become injured, death, everything else, to understand, like, wait a minute, these people have some of the hardest jobs to get on the planet. To be a firsthand operator in one of these top secret black budget projects is only a small few of people, a small number of people that can actually achieve that opportunity and to be there and to have this testimony. So I want people that watch this documentary to really truly pay attention to what's being said, what's been done to them, and what's actually happened. And to understand that it's time for us to take back control of this planet by everyone taking part in sharing the information, sharing the knowledge and the wisdom, and really jumping forward on this, not listening to it and kicking our feet up and watching the world burn, but to really take some real action to be able to spread this information around, tell people, let's pay attention to what these men said. These men are risking their actual lives. They're risking their families' lives to come forward with this information. It's that crucial that we should owe them the ability to pay attention and also help take action with them in spreading this information and making sure that we don't see ourselves on the wrong side as well. Because sometimes you don't have to commit a crime to be on the wrong side. Your collusion through silence puts you on the wrong side. It's
Absolutely.
time for everyone to speak up. And that's what Battle for Disclosure is all about.
Yeah, and you know, I grew up in the South towards the end of the Jim Crow laws, and we struggled against that. I had an African American girlfriend in high school and almost got killed. And in fact, I was run over. They tried to run me over. You know, these struggles for truth and for justice and equality and all these things, they don't happen by themselves. And so people need to understand there's a price, and that, you know, you have to be willing to make that sacrifice. And these courageous people coming forward are. But let's not let that be in vain. Let us be on the side of this, because remember, you know what Billy had said a moment ago, the mainstream media is always going to be parroting and echoing the party line of these powerful interests. But now with social media and all of us getting educated, we can counter that. And so we have to have the vision of how the world goes forward in a positive way. And we have to share that vision with our fellow citizens on Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible times right now, everybody from around the world. It's been my pleasure talking with both Stephen Greer and Billy Carson. You know, the events are in real time. It's a liquid story right now, and Battle for Disclosure is right in the middle of it. And it's, again, streaming worldwide on all streaming services. Japan, Germany, the UK, Canada, Mexico, even in Russia. So it's amazing. We got subtitles in all these different languages. So the link is below in the description. You could watch it right now. And again, leave your comments in this podcast and also leave your reviews on Amazon. It really helps to get the word out. But let's just watch one more quick clip from Battle for Disclosure. Watch this.
Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes.
These technologies are unsanctioned, but they are illegal operations, and this can be proven in any court of law.
They are literally making their own money to fund their own projects.
These are brand new witnesses, and they've got bombshell information to talk about.
Military officers, pilots who are, you know, coming forward.
You know how to keep a secret. Secrets are a stock and trade.
I don't care if it's a general, I don't care if it's anybody. You are not allowed to talk about what happened. You can go to prison for this, or you can be killed.
These are transnational issues. You're covering up the truth and you want them silenced.
As we get closer, I could feel the vibrations coming off of it, but there was no sound.
Anyone been murdered?
It looks like we have a problem here that needs further investigation.
That is the foundation of everything we've done, is that these projects are a priori illegal and therefore unconstitutional and have to be reined in, because not doing so is a threat to the national security.
All right, we're back. And let me tell you, I just wanted to get a couple last words from you. I know 2025 is going to be just right around the corner. We're going to have a new president. And apparently, from what I've been hearing, what Dr. Greer's been hearing, that this president might be the one that brings disclosure. Even Burchett, I spoke to him moments after he just got out of a meeting with Donald, and basically he says he's on board. He's already taken a bullet for this country. He's willing to risk his life. So maybe we got a chance at this. Dr. Stephen Greer?
Well, actually, it's the other way around. The disclosure of this information is not going to be coming from the current or incoming president. It's going to be coming from these courageous people coming forward. And then whoever is the president, and it could have been anybody, it could have been RFK Jr., theoretically, they're going to have to deal with it. So now let's talk about that. How they deal with it is going to be very important. And this is where they need to be advised and counseled, and they need to hear from the public, because these are politicians. I'm not a politician, don't want to be, but they need to hear from the people. And the people need to say, well, look, we want you to do the right thing here. And here's a copy of the speech that Dr. Greer has put together, and the talking points and how this needs to be done. We are going to release at least redacted parts of this briefing document for everyone fairly soon. It's 300 and some pages. Now, not everything can be put in there because there are sensitive names and sources and methods and whatnot, but a great deal of it will be. I'd say 95% of it will be. And people need to then say, yes, this is the roadmap forward, because you don't have people in the incoming administration that have very much information at all on that. We're busy trying to correct. But then without that information, they can't take proper action. So this is a process, and they need to hear from the people. I hear this from members of Congress all the time, that they really need to hear from their constituents, that they want this taken care of. But now they're going to need it from their constituents. They're going to need to hear, here's what we don't want you to do, and here's what we want you to do, right? Here are the actions you could take that could be a disaster for our country and for humanity, where it goes into a war footing and panic. And here are the things that can be done that are wise and that would be beneficial and would move us into a whole new golden age of humanity, not just America, but the whole planet. So I think that's what they need to hear from their people, and that's us. But by the way, I want to be very clear. I have no official standing, don't want one. And I've never had, even all these high-level meetings I've never signed a non-disclosure agreement. I've never agreed to secrecy. It's a gentleman's agreement. And I'm the only person on the law enforcement special forces part of this that is not under an NDA. But that's been my requirement all the way back to the early 90s when I briefed the director of the CIA. And the reason for that is that I need to be unencumbered because of what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a position you need to be in. Disclosure's in our hands, right, Billy?
It's in our hands. You know, this could be the first president in history that has to face all of this data. And it's an enormous amount of data.
Yes.
You know, not hearsay, it's not speculation, it's not so-and-so, I said they saw this and that. This is actual real data that's been held accountable, that's verifiable, that's verified. And so this could be the first time in history since the foundation of the United States, formation of the United States, I should say, where a president has had access to really get full disclosure on exactly what has been going on and what has happened. And then it's going to have to make a very tough decision, or a few tough decisions on how to deal with this matter. And so we're living in a very incredible time right now. It's really a great time to be alive, because we're actually living to witness this situation unfold right before our very eyes, and to see all the seeds that Dr. Greer has planted over all these decades finally taking root and sprouting up and growing into something that's probably going to become a tree that we might never sit in the shade of, but it's definitely growing into a huge tree, and it's going to bear fruit.
Yeah. Well, you youngins might be around to sit under that tree, but I mean, in June I'll be 70, so I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
Keep our fingers crossed. I think things will. Advanced medicine is right around the corner too. You know, exciting times. Super amazing that Battle for Disclosure is out on the street, available for the world to watch. So, and to speak with both of you in this liquid situation with the drones and what's going on with Battle for Disclosure. Incredible ride tonight. Appreciate you, Billy Carson at Forbidden Knowledge. We're going to put the link below. Everybody, all the links, all social media for both Dr. Stephen Greer, Third Phase of Moon, and Forbidden Knowledge is going to be in the description. Show your support. Any last words there, Steve?
Oh, no, I just want to thank you guys for working on this and helping get the word out. And we're going to need to be leaning on you a great deal more in the future. And all the people listening, please contact us if you can help at our drstephengreer.com. But also, if you can, if you're connected to any large influencers who can reach, you know, hundreds of thousands or millions of people, please let me know. We need to get them this packet of intelligence and information so that they can drop the link to their followers. And this is very, very important, that this is a people's movement to disclose, right? This is not coming out of the US government. It's coming out of people who are in these illegal black projects, handing them off to us and to the media and social media. But I'm sort of the public face of their effort until they unmask themselves. So we're trying to get this set up. So that's very important. Those of you who can help or may know people. I know that Aaron Rodgers just dropped something about me, but it was dealing with CE5 contacting these drones. It was very funny, actually. But we need a lot of people who will take, he's an NFL a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. But what we need is, you know, hundreds of people like that who would receive this information and share it with their followers. And that's how you override and overcome the corrupt corporate media.
Billy, any last words?
Download the Battle for Disclosure and then share it with everyone you know. That's it.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
You know, what a great, what a wild ride. Everybody be safe out there. We'll see everybody real soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Appreciate y'all. Bye-bye.
You don't know that at the very top, that whole project is being run illegally.
These are brand new witnesses, and they've got bombshell information to talk about.
These technologies are unsanctioned. They are illegal operations, and this can be proven in any court of law.
It's like, wow, nobody's coming after us. We're gonna do this until we can get away with it.
They would have so much control over everything if they had that.
If this information was all released, it could fall into the wrong hands.
They're using security as a cover for illicit or illegal or even treasonous activities.
The members of Congress didn't have the detailed information of the precise location.
Where they keep the bodies, the craft, the debris, all the evidence that we've been searching for the last 80 years.
He knew how to keep a secret. Secrets were his stock and trade.
They're literally making their own money to fund their own projects.
We have a source currently in the deep black world.
It doesn't matter if you're president of the United States, you're not going to talk about that.
There was this large monolithic slab, looked like it was elevated off of the ground.
It is traumatic.
Look, this is the most top secret shit you've ever heard of.